I'm not 70.
Let's establish that first.
I'm 52, and that's the oldest I've ever been. And I share Glenn's frustrations for many of the same reasons. And as we've discussed on Blogging Heads, I write about race less since about early last year than I ever have before. I quietly turn down most offers. I no longer speak live about race at all, except when it involves Glenn, despite the money that I could make doing it. And it is because of a certain stalemate in the dialogue that I see. And I'm not sure that we can quite get past it. And it's based on really just two things. It's not complex. It's actually rather simple. It's two log jams that make it impossible to have an honest conversation about race in this country right now. And I've decided to sit out the debate for about 5 years until fashions change. And I don't want to make it seem like I'm talking around the fact that, as Glenn was referring to, the idea that freshmen are now given Ta-Nehisi Coates' book to read, to me, basically just stops the race debate in its tracks. If it's going to be like that, then I'm not in it until some time passes. This is what I mean. There are two problems. One is a white problem, one is a black problem. I'm going to do the white one first. It has become a matter of religious faith among educated white people in America to feel a sense of atonement for being racist. When I say that it's religious, I don't mean that as a kind of trash talk. I don't mean that as a way of getting attention. I mean that it has become a matter of what any anthropologist who had no pre-existent biases would identify as a religious faith. We don't use the word religion, but it is a faith. And that is the idea that, for example, I'm going to use a phrase that we're all so used to, but really break it down. America needs to come to terms with racism. Okay. What terms? What does that mean? Come to terms. What would the situation be if America came to those terms? Let's imagine the America that we're all about to walk back into after this seminar. This is an America where America has come to terms. What? Is it about something that would be written? Is it about conversations that would be had? What are the terms? One imagines a certain musical soundtrack, but that's a movie. What are the terms? It has no meaning at all that America would come to terms. Does it mean reparations for slavery? Because we've talked about that and nothing comes of it, and yet we keep talking about the coming to terms. It means nothing. What it means is that educated whites now consider it a mark of being morally advanced to acknowledge their inner racists. And the idea is that at some point, America will come to terms with that racism. But what are the terms? That has no meaning except as an analogy to Christian theological conceptions. It's about a judgment day. It's about this time when all of a sudden something happens where white people are absolved of their inner racism, and then we move on. But obviously, in terms of the lives that we're leading, walking around with our bottles of water, that has no meaning at all. And so, that's not activism. To be a white person and to think, I am racist, I have white privilege, I'm going to acknowledge this all the time, does nothing for the black people that Glenn was just talking about. It's something that's inwardly directed. It's very humane, it's well intended, but it has nothing to do with anything that Dr. King was talking about. It has nothing to do with anything that the civil rights movement was about. It's an inwardly turned and, frankly, idle matter. I have not written about this because I think it would be mean to the people who convene Aspen, but I'll say it here, that I was at Aspen in 2017, and various things were discussed at Aspen. It was a very smart event. All sorts of brilliance was going on at Aspen. But, of course, at one point in the middle, there was this event that was about racism in the 21st century. Okay, so racism in the 21st century. Now, the question would be, given all the other events, what were we going to learn at this event? What was the new thing? But there was nothing to learn. I went to this thinking to myself, I shouldn't go, but I'm black and I'm at Aspen and there aren't that many black people. I should go. And I'm going to learn about, the racism here at Aspen. So I went. The food was spectacular. Now, it was run by one of my favorite black commentators. I'm not going to name who she was, but I really wish they had not wasted her time doing this. And there were 3 panelists. And everybody who was black at Aspen went to it, and a lot of the white people as well. This event had no substance whatsoever. It was church. It was literally church. No one would have used the word church, but there was this church service in the middle of Aspen. So, an eminent black foundation director, who I will not name, talked about how when he was coming up in the business, he would not wear casual clothes on Casual Friday where he worked because he thought that it wouldn't be good for a black person to do that. And everybody clapped. That was considered very funny. Then a middle-aged, I know I'm middle-aged too, a middle-aged white man talked about how he has a coach to teach him about white privilege every week. Somebody comes to his house every week and teaches him that he's privileged as a white person. And everybody clapped. In other words, he has a pastor. And then everybody left, and everybody talked about how wonderful this event had been. Nobody learned anything. That event served for white people at Aspen to atone for being racist. Then everybody went off and actually learned things. It was a church service. That is the way things are now. Every third story on Slate is a church service. Every third story at NPR is a church service. It really doesn't help anything to acknowledge that racism is something more abstract than cross burnings on lawns is one thing. To walk around thinking of it as a permanent stain that you must always atone for and never really will until America, quote unquote, comes to terms with racism is fiction. It is something as benighted and idle as something that we might see in an unlettered tribe and find curious. That is the white problem. Black problem. We have been taught as black people to pretend that racism is more of a problem than it is. So, to be a good, smart black person is to walk around identifying racism in various ways. Of course, it's not usually overt, and so you're supposed to find it in subtle ways. And, look for it and you'll find it. And that means that you are taught that to be a good, educated black person is to claim that we are the only people in the history of humanity who can only succeed under ideal conditions. We are taught that to say that makes us proud. That's supposed to be the basis for a true ego, a true sense of pride. It's unquestioned often. Just as it's unquestioned that a white person is supposed to attest to their privilege and think of themselves as racist and buy Ta-Nehisi Coates' books, etc., etc. As a black person, you were supposed to say that, oh, well, that's just racist. Well, the reason for that is racist. And the problem for that is this. If anybody has listened to Glenn and said, well, yes, racism is real, isn't it? So don't we have to think about that? One, if you're white and what you're thinking about is, don't I have to think about my inner racist? I say no, not as much as you've been taught, especially over the past 15 years. It serves no purpose. And more to the point, yes, if you're black, there is racism. But why have you been taught to fetishize it so much? Why have you been taught to proudly say, I am a member of a race who is the first race in the 150,000 years of this species' history that can only succeed under ideal or even close to ideal conditions? Can you imagine a group of people in the past? I'm right now sitting through Ben-Hur, the 1959 with Charlton Heston. I've never wanted to see it. And I'm on sabbatical and I'm watching all these movies that I don't want to see because I have time. And one of them is Ben-Hur. There are Jews in it. And as stupid as that movie is, there is nobody in Ben-Hur who is saying that because we're having problems, we are not going to succeed. It's as simple as that. I don't mean modern Jews. I'm not making some tired argument about people living on the Lower East Side. I'm talking about just people in the desert on a movie set. And yet, we're taught today, I am a middle-class black person, and yet I am going to say, on behalf of myself, in terms of some slightly racist comment I may have heard somebody make, and on behalf of my cousins who are working class or poor, that they will not be able to succeed until white people are completely devoid of any vestige of racism. That in itself makes no logical sense. So many people have succeeded despite the dominant class not precisely seeing them as equals. In fact, if you think about it, all people have done that. That's all people. But for some reason, the descendants of slaves in something called the United States of America, starting in the late 20th century and extending into this one, can't do that. Something's different. Nobody explains why it's different, because human beings aren't historians, but that is the dialogue. It won't do. It isn't true. It's not that it doesn't taste good to me, it's illogical. And yet we're stuck with these convictions. So, I'm done, but to review. 1, the white person who thinks that it's their job to atone for their inner racist and that somehow makes poor black people less poor. It's fake, it's idle, it's insincere, it needs to go. But I don't see how it can be fixed. There are some of you in here who are white who are probably angry at me for putting it this way so directly. I can't fix that. 2, the black idea that racism, even when it's subtle, is something that we must obsess about because we can't succeed unless all racism is gone. That makes no sense. I don't even have to defend that it makes no sense, because if I put it that way, it's quite clear to you. Nevertheless, to a great many black people, I'm bad for saying that, because I'm distracting white people from their guilt. Over the 20 years that I have been commenting about race, I have noticed that you run up against these two things, and you're told that you are an asshole. And you are told that you're not really an intellectual. You're told that you just don't understand. And I've gotten tired. And I'm only 52. And so, it's at the point where I'm being happy linguist, and I am sitting out the race debate because I'm trying to be happy and my children are small. But that is what Glenn and I are discussing. You know what? I'm done. Thank you.